some parliamentarian things. So is there a motion to approve the Student Achievement Committee meeting minutes from September 10th?
So moved.
Motion by Vice Chair Johnson Hostler, second by Ms. Caulfield. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The ayes have it. The minutes have passed, and we will kick it over to you, Dr. Wilson Norman.
Well, good afternoon. I want to take the time today to introduce our interim assistant superintendent, Nancy Barber. I don't think you guys have had an opportunity to meet her before, and I have a team with me, our senior administrators, Patricia Quinn and Cindy Anderson. And today we hope to share with you some of the things that we have in place to support our students in the special education program. Let's see here, clicker. Jacob, would you have clickers not working? So as we think about our goals for today, our desired outcomes, it is to clearly communicate the comprehensive support systems that are in place to help our students transition seamlessly beyond high school. Also to demonstrate the success of the occupational course of study pathway that showcases strong graduation rates for our students who are exiting the program. And also showcasing the roles of our EC job coaches. As we begin to think about, as our students transition from high school and our EC programs, what's next? This month is National Disabilities Employment Awareness Month, and we want to highlight some of the ways that we prepare our students to be employed post-high school. All of our work aligns and goes back to the strategic plan. As we think about graduation, we want to ensure that we are tracking and monitoring the graduation rates of our students in our Exceptional Children's Program as well, and that we want to eliminate proficiency disparities. Also thinking about high instructional core for all content areas. And all of this work aligns closely with our strategic plan.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson Norman. We also want to think about, as we think about education, we go beyond the classroom. And we're going to talk specifically today about transition. So wanted to share this quote, and I'm going to read it because I think it's a powerful statement about focusing beyond the classroom. Successful transition planning focuses on providing students with disabilities the tools they need to achieve independence and success beyond the classroom. And that's what we really want to highlight today, is not only what we do in classrooms, but how we begin thinking very early in a child's educational career about what they're going to do once they leave our safe hands. So if we'll go to the next slide, we're looking at 4 post-secondary transition areas: coordinated activities, results-oriented, which is really focusing on improving academic and functional achievement, post-school focus, and then making sure we're doing this through an individualized approach. And our 2 senior administrators from Special Education Services are very passionate about this work. So it's my pleasure to turn it over to the experts and let them dig a little bit deeper into this information.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I am very passionate, but I have promised everybody I would keep my feet nailed to the floor and try not to shout. So thank you for your time today. To ensure effective transitions, that we want to focus on those key several areas that you see that are circled around that post-secondary goal. And they include the academic performance, self-determination, career interest, and adaptive behaviors. Each student with an IEP that is developed, we keep all of this in mind as the team and the parent collaborate to make the best decision for the student moving forward through the transition process. Next slide, please. Oh, perfect. Thank you. As you can see by the information highlighted on this slide, transition planning is critical for the success of our students with disabilities. 70.7% of the students with disabilities received a high school diploma, compared to 85.9% of all of our students. This statistic underscores the importance of the targeted support in bridging the gap. Through initiatives like Project Search, and other community involvement partners, where over 70% of interns from the 2022 class were able to find competitive, integrated employment within 9 months of graduation. We are making strides to ensure that these students receive the services that they need to be successful in life in high school and in their post-secondary life as well. The occupational course of study pathway. So next we're going to focus on the occupational course of study pathway because it is a pathway to a North Carolina high school diploma. A North Carolina high school diploma. I say that twice because I don't even like the word certificate. Which equips our students with disabilities for success in the workforce through academic instruction and then hands-on vocational training. As you can see from the 2 grids and the information on the screen, the occupational course of study is designed for students with post-secondary goals that focus on employment. It's an exceptional children program that emphasizes the functional academics and the vocational training, preparing students for work and the community college readiness. Key graduation requirements are 22 academic credits and then 600 vocational training hours that are attached to that to provide them with those vocational skills to be successful. The program is tailored to meet each student's needs with the decisions made, again, by the IEP team and the collaboration of the parent. Our occupational course of study pathway offers structured support in the career exploration, job search, and the application process. These strategies and programs are key to helping our students secure the competitive employment after graduation. And we are proud that Wake County Public Schools also partners with EDSI, as you see on the next slide. EDSI, which is Educational Data Systems, and they provide our students through 10 modules of employment and employment skills. So we're very happy to have them as our partner. The next slide over. You'll see a lot of statistical information. Our OCS pathway has seen consistent success over the years. Notably in 2024, overall diploma rate reached 98.3%. So very, very proud of the hard work that was poured into obtaining that graduation rate, showing a strong upward trend, as you can see from the previous years. Additionally, the diploma comparison data indicates significant improvement from the 71.7% that was in the cohort from 2022 that you had seen in the previous slide. We're not going to stop there. We are dedicated to making sure that we graduate 100% of these students with a North Carolina high school diploma. And it is done through targeted support and a very, very dedicated staff. Next slide, please. Thank you. Our data on OCS cohorts shows promising trends. The returning rate for seniors in 2024 improved significantly with only 1.7% returning, which is down from 7.4% in 2023. That is also another targeted area that we focus on. This indicates that more students are successfully completing their pathway on time. They are graduating with their cohort. Additionally, the cohort dropout rate has steadily decreased, another statistic we're very proud of, from 21.6% in 2020 to 15.1% in 2024. We would like to see that go even lower. So this highlights the effectiveness of our efforts to keep students engaged and to keep them on track and focused to graduate with that diploma. Now to discuss the Certificate of Completion pathway and how it supports students in achieving their goal. I am going to turn it over to Ms. Patty Quinn, our Senior Director for Extended Content Standards.
Thank you, Cindy.
Yes.
This pathway is designed to ensure that all students have a clear route to success after high school. The Certificate of Completion pathway is part of our Extended Content Standards program designed for students with significant cognitive disabilities. This pathway focuses on essential academic subjects and real-life skills such as employment and independent living, ensuring students are equipped for life beyond high school. In this program, students learn in smaller class sizes, allowing for individualized attention, and are assessed using the NC Extend 1 assessment. While they don't receive a traditional diploma, students earn a graduate certificate and can continue their education until they reach 22 years of age. The program includes 22 credits covering core subjects like English, math, science, and social studies, along with electives that are focused on vocational and independent living skills. This pathway ensures that all students, regardless of their cognitive challenges, have the opportunity to achieve independence and success. Next slide, please. Our campus-based job suggestions provide students with hands-on work experience right at school. These tasks, ranging from delivering mail to assisting in the library, help students develop essential skills for future employment while contributing to the school community. Next slide. Our community-based vocational training program partners with local businesses to provide students with real-world employment skills. Through these partnerships, students gain supervised experiences in various work environments, helping them build the skills necessary for competitive employment. This hands-on approach is crucial in preparing our students for successful transitions into the workforce. We are proud to partner with Community Workforce Solutions to offer pre-employment transition services to students with disabilities. These services offered through the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act complement our existing transition programs and enhance workforce service delivery at no cost to students and families. Looking ahead, our newly designed School Transitions program will support students with developmental disabilities in achieving their post-secondary goals and transitioning successfully into the workforce. This program will focus on areas such as social engagement, career development, and community-based training. Next slide. Project Search is a one-year program for Wake County Public School System students with developmental disabilities. Hosted at Embassy Suites in Raleigh-Durham RTP, students gain employability skills through workplace internships. The program focuses on helping students secure competitive employment with support from a dedicated team. Eligibility is for students aged 18 to 22 who have completed their high school credits and are ready for employment. Next slide. Our Project Search program has been highly successful, with 41 interns completing the program since 2019 and 24 of them securing employment in Wake County. This program gives students real-life work experience combined with employability and independent life skills training. Now I'll turn it back over to Cindy Anderson to discuss the key roles of our job coaches and transition teachers in supporting these students through their journey.
Thank you, Patty. So we're going to look at some of the people that are involved in supporting our occupational course of study students that help encourage them and grow them in their vocational training roles. So job coaches and transition teachers are essential to the student's success. And we want to explore how these roles make a difference in the lives of our students. As you can see on the slide presentation, job coaches and transition teachers are critical for the support of our students. They assist with employment skills, overseeing their vocational training, develop job sites, and maintain communication to ensure that students are successful during the transition from school to work and while they are at the job site and as they transition to the next level. Transition and community agency fairs. We host about 8 of those a year, and we have anywhere from 12 to 14 community agencies that come out to our schools. They're from 4:30 to 7:30 in the afternoon. We host at several high schools and are actually piloting 2 middle schools this year to see if we can start spreading that word a little early. So with these 8 fairs, we provide this event, and we actually have legal guidance present. We have guardianship conversations and financial planning. And that is all tailored to meet not only the students' needs, but to also help support our parents as they go through the transition process with their students and provide them with resources in our community. Dr. Whitson?
Well, you had an opportunity to hear the exciting work that is happening under the leadership of this team. And we turn it over now for any questions that you may have about the presentation.
Thank you so much for diving into this, and I'm sure it's going to be a lot of questions for those who are new to special education, such a complex, very complex, and ensuring that every child's needs are met. And one thing, Ms. Anderson, that stood out in your presentation was the term collaboration between the parents and the team and how they all work together to ensure that every child's specific goals are being met and needed. So I see some questions. Ms. Edmonds, we'll start with you.
So slide 7, I think all of this is Wake County data, but it just caught my attention. I just wanted to confirm that this is for Wake County Public Schools because it said that the source is from the U.S. Department of Education versus DPI. That's the only reason I'm asking it. Slide 7, where you talk about the 70.7% high school diplomas, 50% going on to higher education. That's the slide that I'm talking about.
This slide is really looking at kind of national information.
Okay, which is fine. That's why I noticed it was U.S. versus DPI. And then just a comment. I know that the broader community in Wake County have no idea that we have this program and such successes, and I am guilty as a board member. I don't talk about it enough. And while, there might be many families that don't need these services or don't have children that are in this, of these needs for these resources, I think it's just something to celebrate and lift up that we have this, and I'll try to do better. And I might have y'all come to like my BAC just because just the public needs to know that it's more than just special education classes, in the school buildings. So thank you, and I challenge us to do better in that regard, collectively. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Caulfield?
Thank you. I was just wondering, how many students have we been able to help with this? In total? 'Cause I know you said the program's been on for a while, so.
From the occupational course of study position, we serve approximately 750 to 785 students, 9th grade to 12th grade. Our focus is on employment skills, particularly starting around 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade.
Do you have a follow-up?
And those numbers may vary just a little bit from
So
year
that's
to
per
year.
year, we're able to help that many
Yes, ma'am.
students?
Yes, ma'am.
For the students on the certificate track, those students, there are 10 students currently participating in the Project Search program. There are 16 students currently participating in the Community Workforce Solutions Transitions program, and there are over 600 high school students participating in the PREETS program in our Extended Content Standards classrooms, and we have incorporated PREETS through Community Workforce Solutions in 5 of our middle schools currently.
Thank you. I was going to dive in to see if we could flesh those numbers out a little bit more as it relates to Project Search, because I feel like that was another question that we were going
And
for.
I'm very excited to add to that we now officially, as of this year, have EDSI in every one of our high schools. And that is an initiative that we have been working on since I've been in this position to keep layering our high schools. So they are officially in all of our high schools this year.
Since special education has so many various acronyms, mine,
Said what EDSI.
yes.
Oh,
thank
I'm
you,
so
Doug.
sorry.
No, I know what it is, but everybody else might not.
We're talking acronyms.
Yeah.
It is Educational Data Systems Incorporated.
Thank you. It's another one to add to our list. Yes. Ms. Rice?
First of all, I just want to say, I love this subject. I've done this professionally. I just want to make sure that the public and everyone knows how well of a job you do with integrating community people or community agencies with the students that we serve. I have had the pleasure of having to come into Wake County schools and serve and do assessments for our students who would have to be as a job coach and working with voc rehabilitation services. So it is a wonderful thing that you all are doing and how you're connecting with families and making sure students have what they need when they leave the classroom of all disability levels, right? And so I just want to give you guys kudos for making sure these programs are in place. Mr. Swanson for bringing them to the table to elevate it, because I'm a champion for special education services and have worked in it for years. And so just really great job with making sure families are aware and allowing agencies to come in and to support all of our students. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Vice Chair?
No, thank you.
Yes, thank you all so much. Thank you.
All right, new business. As we transition to our next presentation for the Student Achievement Committee, we're focusing on our regional support model. And we talked last month about some of our test scores, some of our outcomes, and our regional support model is really focused on how do we support schools and how do we support students in helping improve student outcomes. I'm joined today by Drew Cook, Assistant Superintendent of Academics, and Michelle Woodson, Assistant Superintendent of Student Support Services. That as we think about sharing the work around this regional model, we want to clearly communicate how the regional support model provides targeted, data-driven support to schools, and how we are using this model to enhance instructional practices. We also want to highlight the systematic approach and how we're looking at how do we provide differentiated supports to schools. And this supports may include things like academic, special education services, and student support services to help meet the unique needs of schools. We also hope to explain to you how the model's key support domains work together and how we partner with our area superintendent team, our chief of schools, to ensure that we are aligning to provide schools with the tailored support in which they need and deserve. As we think about our work and connecting this work to our strategic plan, that we want to ensure that we have high-quality instructional core in all content areas. And how do we model and support schools in that work? And also looking at how do we deliver standards-based instruction, analyze performance data, and how does that trigger supports to schools? And then keeping an eye and lens on equity-focused practices. We also want to make sure that we're marrying the work of academics with behavior, with the behavioral health work. And providing a safe, inclusive environment is very important as we begin to think about accelerating academics. And then looking at who is doing well and who is not as we look at the overrepresentation of students in certain groups. And then how do we differentiate our resources? And that's really what we'll dig in today. How do we use our human resources within our central services to provide a level of support to schools? You have heard about our learning model, and our learning model is serving as our anchor for our work. And as we think about our learning model, when we think about our regional coaching support framework, aligning coaching and professional development to the challenge me. How are we working closely with schools to ensure that we're providing targeted support around our standards-based instruction? Building collaborative support systems around CME, and then engaging staff leadership as we pair and engage me. So this framework serves as a structure. It outlines the what practices are we using to support schools, and our learning models focus on equity and excellence. This data just pulls out the goals that have been set by our district for our strategic plan. That we have said that 90% of students by 2028 will be proficient. And we're looking at kind of the trend line across all subgroups. This slide showcases the ambitious goals we set for our district to achieve 90% proficiency across all subgroups. The chart breaks down the current proficiency levels and highlights the annual rate of improvement required to meet the goal for different student demographics. So based on various demographics, the gaps are larger and the climb may be larger. So we have to begin to look at what is our rate of improvement to reach that goal over time. The purpose of the regional support model is to provide targeted, data-driven support that is responsive to these differences. Our model ensures that schools serving the students facing the greatest challenges receive the support and resources necessary to make these gains in the timeline that we've established in our strategic plan. As we begin to think about framing our approach, so what is our approach to the regional model? There's a focus on academics and behavior, that they are interconnected, that we can no longer think about behavior separately from academics, and how do we embed and intertwine those pieces. That our work has to be grounded in principal and teacher experiences. How do we best support them? And establishing trusted relationships and shared ownership. How does the central services team assume reciprocal accountability for student outcomes? And so this frames our approach in how we go about servicing and supporting schools. Our drivers for change, that we have really looked at fostering strong relationships through our support model. And Mr. Cook will go into more detail about how we have aligned our teams to be able to provide that work. Thinking about strategic resource allocation. So when we think about additional tutors, what is the frame or bar that we're using to ensure that we're putting our resources in the right places? And then specialized approaches for elementary and secondary. That while we want to have a K-12 model, that we know that elementary is a little bit different from secondary, and how do we provide supports at those various levels. Mr. Cook will walk us through our support team structure, what was in the past, and as we move forward, what are we talking about now?
Thank you, Dr. Wilson-Norman. Good afternoon, everyone. So in the past, going back probably at least the last 15 or 20 years, the Wake County Public School System Academics Department has been structured in a way that primarily focused on providing leveled program support. As many of you may know, in elementary, middle, and high school, we would then have separate district teams like intervention, Title I, and MTSS all up under the academics department that were in place to provide additional specialized support. And as Dr. Wilson-Norman just referenced, we recognize there is a need for a more comprehensive approach That's going to allow us to meet schools' needs more strategically and to provide more tailored interventions and targeted support across all regions. I think to put it simply, in order to accelerate the rate of achievement and improvement that you saw on slide 5 necessary to meet those goals, we have to approach the work a little bit differently. And so I think, hopefully the theme here is this is not business as usual. And we're not talking about things that we have been doing for years and we're going to refine or tweak around the edges. This is some pretty significant organizational change within the academics department. I think we all agree and understand, though, that, you get what you've always gotten if you do what you've always done. And so this is really an effort, I think, to acknowledge the good and great work that has been happening and leverage and continue to scale what has had positive impact, but also find significant opportunities to grow and improve at a rate and a pace that I think our students and our community expect and deserve based on those goals and the strategic plan. So with that context, this is kind of an oversimplified picture of how the academics department has been previously structured. Essentially, you'll see there were 7 teams here in addition to the elementary, middle, and high school level teams. There was a K-12 instructional support team that included Title I, intervention and advanced learning, ESL, and other state and federal programs, which, by the way, that team way off to the right of the slide there was by far the largest team within the department. It made up a disproportionate number of staff members that over the years had kind of accumulated. And again, that was a reflection of the need to kind of break some silos and incorporate some additional staff and leverage it where we feel like it's going to have a more direct impact on school improvement. Also, we had the K-12 curriculum development team, which you may recall in our last session in this meeting last month. We talked a little bit about the curriculum redesign work. That is ongoing. That will continue. We also had an MTSS team that included both academic and behavior specialists. And we also had a co-curricular programs and academic enrichment team. And I'll use air quotes because that team is a one-person show named Linda Ramirez Carter, and still is. She leads and coordinates programs like foreign exchange, credit by demonstrated mastery, governor's school, as you all know, high school graduations every year, also summer programming as well, in addition to other enrichment and support opportunities across the district. In total, this graphic represents roughly 130 full-time staff at the district level in the academics department. That includes administrators, coordinating teachers, other instructional specialists, and administrative support staff. To be clear, we're reorganizing what we have as opposed to adding anything new. So everything that we're sharing and all the work that we've been doing has essentially involved restructuring what we've got, not asking for something more beyond what we've already had in the past. I'll also note, given that number of 130 district staff, for additional context, I'll just share with you for what it's worth. A decade ago, in my last year as a high school principal in a school in the district, I had 200 staff at one school, right? And so 130 is by no means an insignificant number. I think we all are fortunate to have the resources that we have in Wake County at the district level. But given the fact that our department supports the success of 160,000 or so students in 199 schools, you get a sense then of how critical it is for us to make sure that every single one of those 130 staff members are in a place that maximize their positive impact. And so that's another, I think, important rationale for the why behind this work. This quote, I think, kind of reflects our approach. Sustainable improvement in schools requires a system of continuous learning, collaboration, and support. We know that for sustainable change to take root, we need more than just isolated interventions. I think that has been a recurring theme in many presentations over the years. We hear and you hear great exemplars and examples of best practices that may be happening in schools or in pockets, and the question always is, what are we doing to scale that and ensure that is happening in every single classroom and every single school in the district? And part of this change is really geared to get at that, I think, primary significant challenge that we have. So it's really about a systemic and a systematic approach. This reorganization is intended to make our efforts more systematic, meaning they're driven by clear processes and structures that can be replicated and scaled, and also systemic, ensuring that collaboration, effective core instruction, data-driven interventions, and support become embedded in how we operate every single day in every single school and classroom across the district. And it's in this shift that enables us to deliver what really can and should be sustainable improvement across the district. And we want to ensure that every single school benefits from the same high level of targeted support. So a little bit of a timeline over the past year. Many of you may not have been aware, but as we were carrying on the day-to-day work, and by the way, it's been parallel. Nobody gets to call timeout no more than schools or a classroom teacher does and say, wait a minute, we're going to reorganize and change some things around. No, we still operate, the work still happens, school is still happening. And so over the last year plus, going back to the summer of 2023, we've initiated some significant strategic planning to organize our structures at the district level. In January of this year, in 2024, after 6+ months of in-depth planning and preparation, we did formally launch our regional support model and our newly organized academics teams, which, quite frankly, is still a work in progress. We're continuing. Many of those team members are right over there. They would vouch for the fact that this is ongoing work. And I think we all know and recognize there is the process by which we engage in all the technical work. 6+ months of working with HR and finance and job descriptions, funding sources, funding shifts, all those things that have to occur to get an organizational chart done on a piece of paper and get job descriptions down on a piece of paper. Now we're in the phase where the rubber's meeting the road, and it's really about operationalizing what we have on paper. And so this is really probably the most significant, in some ways, the most important work and impactful work that we have ahead of us. So this picture, again, this is intended to provide just a general overview, and it may or may not be more information than the board or others want. But it is intended to give you a general idea of that newly reorganized regional structure with 4 primary goals in mind that you see off to the right of the page, and I'll call those out. First and foremost, as reference, we do want to strengthen and support our schools to achieve the goals that the board and our community has laid out. I think we all know and recognize that clear goals and aligned structures lead to better ownership and accountability. And that extends to the district office. That extends to the academics department. And if these are district goals, then by extension, they should be goals of each of our teams and our departments within academic advancement and across the district. We also want to minimize and eliminate silos across all of our academic advancement departments. That includes student support services, special education services that you just heard from, and also academics. Just one example on this graphic, it's not indicated on this slide, but we've moved positions that had been on separate teams, like that MTSS team and the intervention team or the Title I team, and incorporated some of those into those 4 regional support teams where, quite honestly, in the past, we were a little light in terms of personnel. And so we've shifted some personnel from some of those larger teams to make sure we're leveraging the biggest impact that we can get in terms of personnel and capacity. We also want to deepen alignment with area superintendents. I see Dr. Ashburn over here. I hope that she would vouch for the effort that we've been engaged in, most explicitly over the past year or so, to make sure that we're in lockstep with each other, because they do so much to ensure that all the things that we generate and create product-wise and the focus on the academic side is actually happening on the ground in our schools in the form of school improvement plans, accountability measures. All the work that they do with their principals across the district is vital to ensure this work happens. And obviously, we have to be closely and tightly aligned with them and those teams. And I think this model clearly reflects that. You see the 5 area superintendents there on Region 1 on the left side. You see the 4 area superintendents representing 4 areas on the right side, paired up and matched with those regional senior directors, both at the elementary and the secondary level. And then finally, we also want to maximize current resource allocations. This is also an ongoing theme, knowing how precious all of our resources are. We still have the curriculum team. We still have the K-12 academic enhancement team that you saw indicated on slide 9, but again, some of those positions have been shifted over. I'll also note that while we haven't gotten there yet, another layer of this work is going to be happening as we plan and prepare, as much as I can't believe I'm saying it out loud, because it feels like we just started this school year, for the 25-26 school year when it's time for allotments. And so part of our work and the next phase of this work is going to be to take a deep evaluation and analysis of all the resources that are allotted, for example, out of the academics department. Things like AIG positions to schools, intervention positions to schools, Title I positions to schools, to ensure that we're using data and making sure that the resources are going where they're needed the most, and doing that kind of on a rolling basis, right? So that we got to be careful, because you don't want there to be a whipsaw effect where every year you're giving and taking away resources based on year-to-year data, but it might be 2 or 3 year rolling data points that create some level of stability that still allow us to maximize the resources that we're deploying to school, both in terms of finance, but also in terms, maybe most significantly, personnel and people. So this gives you a little bit closer look when we're talking about Region 1 and Region 2. You can see here, the areas that are kind of assigned under each structure, Region 1 on the left, Region 2 on the right. Our teams are divided into those 2 regions, each consisting of a senior director and also additional support staff who work closely with schools to provide a balance of both academic and behavioral support. And we'll be talking much more about that in the months and year ahead, I'm sure, with the collaboration and work with Michelle Woodson's team, who, by the way, will be sharing more about the academics reorg that she was a part of, right? And now she's on the other side of the parking lot in student support services, and is, in my opinion, perfectly positioned to be able to help integrate this across all of the departments, not just academics in AAT. But this regional approach, again, will allow us to provide tailored resources and expertise both at the elementary and secondary level. And again, we want to work in close collaboration with area superintendents to help ensure that our efforts are aligned. And I want to give a quick shout out to our former superintendent, Kathy Moore, who would say regularly for years and years, even in the deputy role, if it doesn't feel like support to schools, then it's probably not support to schools. And so one of the things that we know and understand is that the more alignment we have at the district level, the more alignment we have with each of our teams, the more alignment we have with each of our departments, and we're all on the same page in terms of what the work is and quote unquote the help that we're providing, the better positioned an individual school will be to receive that help, as opposed to at times feeling overwhelmed by the help and the support, quote unquote, that the district is trying to provide. So that's another, I think, effort here to alleviate some of those challenges that we know we've experienced in the past. And then here, this last slide that I'll cover before turning it over to Michelle, we really want to just call out the 6 foundational principles that guide and support this work. Number 1, again, we want to provide targeted support. This means our efforts are driven by the specific needs of schools, with the focus on closing opportunity gaps for students who need the most support. It means collaboration with area superintendents, as I've referenced. Building strong relationships, not to be undersold. We know our approach has to involve tight relationships and communication with every one of our schools. This is going to allow our staff, who will be assigned geographically, and by the way, I should have pointed out on the previous slide, those regions are not necessarily based on geography alone. We tried to be careful and conscientious about balancing types of schools. So Title I, non-Title I, magnet, non-magnet, low-performing, high-performing, all of those things to ensure we've got some relative balance across those regions, not necessarily just based on geography. Now, when we're assigning staff and team members to support schools, we are going to try to keep them in relative geographic proximity, if for no other reason to keep their efficiency at a maximum in terms of travel from school to school and the support they provide. We'll also be focusing, as referenced, on coaching leadership teams, groups like instructional facilitators, assistant principals for instruction at the high school level, literacy coaches, counselors, and other groups to ensure they're equipped with the resources and the capacity they need to drive that ongoing improvement. We'll be co-designing supports with schools. We're working with schools to identify what their needs are, which, by the way, sometimes one of the hardest things to do is to identify what's working. And so, our staff will be working with area superintendents and other groups to help schools identify and leverage those high-impact strategies that seem to be having the most impact, positive impact, in some classrooms that we want to ensure expand and extend to all classrooms. And then finally, we also want to ultimately establish expert teams. We want to build support teams and professional learning communities to ensure that both instructional and behavioral expertise, and by the way, those are not separate, they are interconnected, as we all know and understand, We want to be sure that that expertise is embedded within every team at the district and at the school level. So we believe strongly that adherence to these principles will be what makes this regional support model effective, so that our teams can work in close partnership with our schools and deliver that adaptive, targeted, and impactful support. So with that, I'll turn it over to Michelle Woodson, who will dive deeper into how we apply these principles through those key support domains.
Thank you. It's good to see you all this afternoon. I'm excited to spend a little bit of time with you to talk a little bit more about how we've worked to develop and provide a comprehensive framework for how we approach assisting schools across the district. We want to make sure that we model, that this model emphasizes collaboration to deliver responsive and targeted support to ensure that every school receives the resources they need regardless of their challenges, which is sometimes hard, right? You have to get what they need, when they need it, where they need it. Our domains focus on 4 key areas of support, which I'll walk you through in the next few slides. Each one plays a critical role in ensuring that we deliver strategic, data-driven interventions and that drive continuous improvement for success. So this quote is from John Hattie, and if you're not familiar, he is an amazing researcher who has done a compilation of a variety of, really a meta-analysis of research across the educational forum, and I think it's significant that the single most important variable in determining the success of a school improvement effort is the collective efficacy of its educators, and that actually turned out to be our theme this summer as we had our leadership conference, really thinking about that. But it certainly underscores the importance of building capacity, and that we want to make sure we're able to do that within our schools. We need to ensure that our educators not only have the resources they need, but that they also are empowered and supported in their efforts to drive improvement. Our key support domains are designed with this in mind. These domains allow us to systematically build and strengthen the efficacy of our educators across the district through targeted collaborative support. So we're going to now look at what those domains are and how they function. So we want to start by looking specifically at the systemic collaboration. We want to make sure that we have direct responsive support, that regional teams work closely with school leaders to identify specific needs and provide targeted interventions. We want to make sure there's collaboration across all key areas, that we're coordinating those efforts in academics, special education, student support services to deliver that comprehensive support, and that there's alignment with the area superintendents, as already mentioned, that we want to ensure that we're tailoring that through that collaboration so that we're fostering support for student success in every school. We're going to then move and talk a little bit about the continuous improvement, that we want to make sure that we have data-driven strategic planning. We want to develop and implement plans based on data analysis and school leader collaboration to provide that targeted support. We want to think about how ongoing refinement always needs to happen continuously as we adjust to support the strategies to address the emerging challenges and to ensure that there is sustained improvement. We want to make sure that there are high-impact practices by identifying and prioritizing those practices that drive meaningful change and resource allocation for long-term success. The next one we want to talk about is that capacity building, which I mentioned just a moment ago. Whoops, excuse me. And that we want to make sure that we're specifically focused on what that capacity building is and how we tailor that professional learning to do that, to build that capacity. We want to make sure there are systems of support in place that emphasize building sustainable support systems and minimizing the need for extensive individual teacher coaching. And then we want to make sure we escalate the escalation of additional resources, that we evaluate significant coaching needs to the assistant superintendent of academics or student support services or special education to elevate and allocate additional resources. And then finally, that evidence of learning, that we have data-driven decision-making happening regularly to collect and analyze data on student support performances student performances, educational practices, and school climate to guide support strategies. We want to make sure we're monitoring progress, continuously tracking that progress and trends to ensure schools are on track to meet their goals, and that we have real-time adjustments, that we're making adjustments to support the plans based on the data analysis to improve student outcomes. So we want to think about how we're going to move this work forward. What are those next steps that's going to help us in rolling out the final integration of our regional support model, and how we plan to support schools as we're moving forward? So as a part of our next steps, we're excited to expand our regional support teams to include members of student support services and special education services. By integrating these critical areas, we ensure that our teams are well equipped to address not only the academic needs of our students, but also their social, emotional, and specialized learning needs. This expansion allows us to provide a comprehensive and unified support system, ensuring that each school receives the targeted interventions and resources necessary to foster student success across all domains. This collaborative approach ensures that no matter the challenge, our schools are supported holistically through expertise in academics, student support services, and special education. And moving forward, we will continue to refine and strengthen this model to create a well-rounded support structure for every school, ultimately enhancing the success for all students. Our regional support model continues to evolve as we move into phase 2 of its implementation. Looking at this timeline, we can see key milestones for the upcoming years. In fall of 2024, we have implemented the regional support teams for academics and behavior, solidifying the foundational components of our structure. These teams will be responsible for delivering targeted support based on the unique needs of each school, ensuring that schools have the resources and guidance they need to succeed. As we look ahead to the 24-25 school year, we will continue the strategic planning to further integrate special education services and student support services into the regional model. This phase will ensure that we are addressing the comprehensive needs of our students, from academics to emotional and behavioral support. And as we continue through these phases, our goal remains the same. We want to make sure we're providing that holistic, responsive support to every school in our district, ensuring that no matter the challenge, our teams are equipped to drive student success. I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Wilson-Norman.
And before we open it up for questions, we have people in the audience. When we think about this slide here, there are people behind that slide. And so let me have Region 1 team. Who's on Region 1? They don't know which region. I know. We have Siobhan Stone and Dr. Brian Johnson, who make up Region 1. Do you have any of your directors here? No. And so they lead a team, and they're paired with a team of area superintendents. Which area superintendents are you paired with?
Mr. Enns, Dr. Sexton. We also have, we have the Western area, which is Dr. Sexton. We have the Northwestern area, which is Cedric Williams. We have the Southwestern area, which is Jonathan Enns. The Northern area, which is Christopher McCabe. And then Southeastern with Mr. James Overman. Okay.
Thank you.
It was like a test.
We're going to see Region 2 figure it out. Pass the hot quiz. We have Dr. Sarita Smith, Emily Montfort, and Lauren Curtis. And so they have the remaining. Do you want to go through your school, the area superintendent you are with?
Yeah, go ahead.
We're in the central area.
Yes.
Then we have southern area, Dr. Thompson. We have eastern area, Dr. Savage, and then we have northeastern area, Dr. Pouncey.
Yes. And so we will, Dr. Taylor, I'm not sure if you wanted to add something.
Absolutely. So the first thing I want to say is I have been absolutely pleased with the work that the academics team has done. Obviously, everybody knows that I'm a person that's about teaching and learning, and so coming in as a new superintendent was way on my radar. but she was on spot with everything that I knew was excellent in terms of how we need to be able to serve schools. So everything is really about building out support to the schools in a specific way and not something that is a monolithic model. I think the other part that I've really been pleased is that she set up the regional model where we can also now begin to strengthen the abilities of the people who serve these schools. So one of the things I've continually challenged district personnel is about how we strengthen our skill set. And so stealing from the words of my wife, we have to build benches, and we don't do that, we're constructing fences. So absolutely pleased with that work. I think the last piece is knowing how we will continue to expand this with student support services and special education services. And so Dr. Wilson-Norman and I have worked very closely on the special education part. And we know student support services is in capable hands. And finally, really the collaboration that we have with area superintendents and the chief of schools. I think this was the most important part to me, is that we not only have a structure that can provide the service, but we work in collaboration with area superintendents who work with principals every day and are very close to the data in terms of where schools struggles, where they need that specific support. So I can't say enough to you, Dr. Stacey Wilson-Norman, for the work that you've done and your entire team. It certainly lines up with what I know are your expectations and what I have done for some time in terms of building out support systems. You got to do that for a state is one thing, but 199 schools is just as significant, and this has been some excellent work. So thank you.
And we forgot to introduce two team members who were the ends of the org chart.
Yeah.
They're holding down the
Perimeter.
Dr. Shanika Moore-Lawrence and Dr. Kendra King. I think you met Dr. King last month.
They're from DPI, of course.
And so we'll open it up for any questions.
Thank you, and Dr. Taylor, you just keep recruiting as much as you can. Thank you for diving into this with us. I'm sure there's going to be some questions. I'll reserve mine to the end. With these headings, we'll start with you and just go around the table.
Thank you. So slide 19, where it talks about next steps and expanding those three areas, does that mean adding staff? And does that mean like after the next budget cycle? Is that what that means? Because you said, Mr. Cook said that
We're going to make you a doctor yet.
that when you weren't talking about more, you were talking about a redisbursement. So
That's right. And so particularly with special education services, it is about realignment of staff. And so there are, I would say, a lot of areas where we do have resources that we are able to use in special education. And so it is about part of that restructuring. And so Dr. Wilson-Norman, maybe in 2 months we might be ready to share the framework that we put in place so far. But it's not necessarily going to require that we hire new staff. And so it is also going to a regional model that we have set up that's similarly structured to what we have in academics. And I'll let you talk about student support services.
Yeah, we will align as well. I mean, ultimately, we're not talking about new staff. We are talking about making sure that our current staff is aligned to make sure that we're providing the supports that the schools need to be able to get the support that they need.
I understand now what you mean by this. Okay. And then my second and last question was, so this is obviously like just starting this school year. Yes. So would we expect like an update at the end of the school year, or maybe not until October, as far as like, well, let's, tell the board what we think we've done, like how it's going.
Dr. Wilson-Norman, that was one of the reasons that I wanted to be able to bring this to the board at this point, to share the work that we've been doing. And so I'll let you speak a little more to that.
I think probably October, because while we are now in place, we're still working through role changes. Mm-hmm. And so we still have to iron out role changes. And as we think about expanding, thinking about how do we, how you build a house, how do we frame it so that others can come on board. And that's kind of where we are, is continuing to build it out and starting to build those linkages with the area superintendents. But we have like a new curriculum team or a modified curriculum team. What does that now look like? We now put Title I people on other teams. What does that look like? And so how are we collectively coming together, doing our training and support so that we can get into our new roles. So I would say October would probably be a better time to bring it back.
Thank you.
And we'll have another year of data at that point,
Right.
right? And the proof can be in the data.
Ms. Caulfield?
I think this presentation, first of all, was amazing. It was a really very good presentation. You gave a lot of information and detail and laid it out just so that we could understand it. Some of the things that I love that you said, eliminating silos, deepening the alignment, just understanding the organization and how you're putting it together and restructuring it. I don't really have any questions. I'm just super excited to see it come back and see how it works and how everything is going. I think the idea of having the regions is really great because it's going to kind of help you fine tune the pockets of where we can help, our students and our teachers the most. So I'm excited to see how it works.
Chair Hager?
So I really appreciate the meeting, and I love the idea of these types of meetings because we throw around a lot of very specific educational terms. And I mean, the expectation is everyone knows what they mean, but as I confessed to staff last week, I did not know what the regional support model was and what exactly it meant. So this is really helpful to me in my role as a board member. I just want to give the feedback in terms of, so you can know what I took out of this and how I processed it. Because of scheduling conflicts, I hadn't been able to attend a lot of these student achievement meetings when they were held on different days. Regional support model, the first question I had was, well, what do you mean by support? What is support? And I'm guessing that's the coaching and professional development. Does that capture anything beyond that? I know that's sort of a simplification, but is that?
Well, coaching and professional development, but when we think about NC Ed Corps, and we have a set of tutors, assigning them to the schools that need them the most. Before we, this would be a good school, but when we go back and look at the data, they didn't really need it. They already had other things. Thinking about when we expand helps, where does it go first? And so the regional model really looks at whatever resources that we have, making sure that we're getting it to the right places.
Okay. And so then that leads to my next question, which was, we talk about our purpose, it sounds like, is we want individual schools with the greatest individual needs to get the greatest resources. Is that?
To get a tailored set of resources.
Tailored set of resources. And so, but then I wonder, well, how is that really regional, right? If you're looking at things as regions and only 2 regions, are you really getting down to what you need for that individualized level of attention? And so going through the process, it looks like you're going through maybe 7 levels of leveled specialized support to this new structure where you've got maybe, 2 regions with about 8 people, elementary school, the K-5 support, the 6-12 support, and then the secondary level, but for each region. So, and the goals were to strengthen support, minimize, eliminate, can't read my note, deepen alignment with the area SUPs and to maximize current resource allotments. So is it just that as a district of almost 200 schools was just too big to do that, and that by going to 100 schools, even though that doesn't really sound like you're focusing on individual schools, it's still a lot more manageable than trying to do that with 200 schools. Is that really what we're getting at?
It is, but I think going a little bit deeper. So if I think about Dr. Smith's area, and so she has, I think, 12 people. Is it 12 or 13? 13 people. Her neediest schools may have a person who's assigned at 1 to 4. But our higher performance schools may have somebody assigned 1 to 16. So you're still getting support, but if you are the neediest, you're getting more frequency. So we're using the people differently. And so you may have someone who could come, you can count on me to come 1 day a week, and we can make a plan that I'm coaching and supporting on. Whereas previously her team may have been coaching 120 schools. And so not really divided up into coming regularly. So I would say that's the difference. So it's that our higher performance schools are still getting services, but it's the frequency. Our lower performing schools are getting more intensity of services. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a baseline of, if you're higher performing, we still want you to continue to move, because when we look at that, you have groups of students who may not be successful. But we know that our lower performing schools intensely have more groups of kids who are further away from the goal. So everyone's getting services, but those teams are focused on specific schools.
Okay. And Mr. Chair, if I could just follow up. So, again, I think that I get it. I just want to make sure. There was one area that I was confused by. It talked about the focus areas, the systematic collaboration, capacity building, continuous improvement, and evidence of learning. Does that represent a new area of thought or a new area of focus, or isn't that sort of what we had been doing? Why was that? What's significant about that slide in that part of the program?
And I'll let Drew jump in, I think that systematic, that we were offering support. But as we start unpacking it and asking, so why did this school get chosen for X? Or why didn't this school get it? Or how did this program come in? Or why is this training not district-wide? Or what is required or not required? So that's the systematic piece of it. The collaboration part of it is we were siloed in academic advancement. But now let's step outside. As we've been going around and doing roundtable discussions, you have people in HR who do things in academics. What's the alignment? You have people in the Office of Professional Learning who do things that support academics. What's the alignment? And so when we think about collaboration across, we really started to focus in academic advancement of trying to tear down our silos, but as we start to partner with people, we're like, we had some redundancy, or this is duplication of various things. And so that's the collaboration of our commitment as academic advancement to eliminate our silos, because as we try to partner with Jackie's team, they live all the silos that exist. And so so that's when we think about the collaboration. So we may have had those pieces in place, but really trying to look at it from a lens of how do we eliminate a silo? How do we get a system that services and supports schools?
And so those focus areas may not necessarily be new, but it's how we can improve in those areas. But then what else is new is taking this model and adding the student services and special education services, and being able to look at each of those areas kind of more holistically and get out of the silos like you were just talking about. Okay, I think I understand it much better now. I think I was hung up on the regional part and the regional term, and really it's targeted support, it's focused support, it's more intentional support based on academic and social, like just need at the schools. Okay, I get it.
Some of the what may not be changing in terms of the philosophy or the resources themselves. I think in essence what we're talking about is how we're doing it, right? And I think the focus support, trying to kind of chunk into regions and in areas within those regions so that we can make sure we're paying attention to every single school and every single classroom. So it's more about the how.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the scaffolding and differentiation we talk about. Sometimes I need a little bit more. So. Thank you.
You're more than Vice Chair Johnson Austin.
Sure. I'm glad Chris went a little before me. So I learned a term from a colleague of mine a few weeks ago. Actually, it's from a deputy U.S. AG who said we shouldn't call ourselves silos because we have a lot of derogatory negative to it. So he was like, we're cones of excellence that we're gonna broaden our excellence so that your excellence isn't in just your cone. Because I do think that that's oftentimes kind of people's hang up is when we say it's a silo, it really is territorial, right? Like it's our domain, it's what we know. So my personal opinion is I'm glad to hear that. I think everything that you all explained for me probably, again, bring it back, Superintendent Moore, she's probably listening somewhere like, oh God, thank God y'all answering this from Ms. Johnson Austin. Because it constantly was my struggle because in a district, a board district that represents so many low-performing schools, that I was struggling, and to your point, Dr. Wilson-Norman, in every way, all the way to student assignment. I was like, help me understand why you're doing this, because this does not equitably address the schools in my district. So to your point, it's literally, for me, a complete overlap with Chief Ellis's department, Because ultimately, I just said it this morning, if my schools don't have access to priority magnets, and yet we still aren't giving the intensity that those schools need, then we shouldn't be surprised if those schools haven't been growing, right? Like, so, I mean, we have to know that something has to be differentiated, and so we know that in the classroom, things have to be differentiated. So I'm glad to hear the district understands that we actually should be using a very similar model to how we engage with our schools. And again, one of the biggest things, I can't speak for my colleagues, but that I get from parents, I know Mr. Cook hears it because he gets a lot of my emails. Now my parents just email him directly, but that is, I also have a district with a lot of transient families. So they may be in a school in District 2, but now they're in a school in District 1, and they don't see the same thing, don't get the same thing, don't even understand how we're the same district. And so I'm saying that out loud because I'm hoping that this is also going to eliminate some of that confusion for families of what they're experiencing in our school district as one family with one child who just happened to go to a school that is in a new school board district, if you will. Because that directly impacts how we continue to have parents see us as the best choice. Is the choice is all 199 schools. It's not just these 10 schools, because that's currently for me been the hardship of a distinction of how the district operationalizes itself. So I, for one, appreciated seeing this, but I have two questions. One of them is, because we've been in those silos, I'd be remiss if I did not ask for the sake of the principals who supported me my entire 11 years, who pretty much taught me everything, which including, why do y'all have these people in central services that are helping me? So I'm hoping I'm going to hear a whole different feedback from those principals now. But I'm also curious about like, what did you all do to create a runway for them? Because again, even though I don't like the distinct differences that happen, I also still respect their role and their autonomy. And so just like I would say, what's the rollout for parents and the runway, I also am curious what's that runway been for our school leaders who are also needing to explain this change in their buildings.
I would say that we shared this chart with school principals in September 23. And we introduced...
That's a good runway.
So we have shared the reorg, and it's taken us some time to get, as Drew said, job descriptions done, working with HR. And then we also introduced our levers to kind of build some connections, and then our learning model. So it's been kind of would you call that a slow rollout, Drew? I don't know.
23, I would give you that. You can go with that. You can say that.
But trying to put milestones along the way of, okay, now here are your people. We had to do some hiring, and also I feel like we've given some time to conceptualize, but really where the work is right now is the work in the buildings and building, and while we keep emphasizing relationships, because it's about building a partnership and not, we don't live it every day, so we are experts in some things, but we have to learn and understand what's happening in buildings so we can be supportive.
Thank you. I do think that's a really good runway for them. The follow-up to that, because again, board members, we do all of our RAMP meetings, and I don't go to a school where I don't hear, do you know if another school's doing this thing? So I'm also curious about like, what is going to be the model of sharing? Because I'm always surprised that in a school with 200 schools, which means we have over 200 counseling student support services staff, that they have no idea what's happening outside of their building. And I don't think that that's a benefit to them, especially because I was in a school yesterday where, except for one person, everybody was in our district less than 2 years, right? So they're also coming to us with no Wake County real understanding, which is a good thing in terms of changing the way that we do business, but it also means they don't have an affinity group or a group of people to be able to understand what is happening, what's working well. So I spent way too much time in my school yesterday for the ramp.
So I will certainly allow them to give their response, but one of those things I think that answers that question is that in this regional model, schools will be a lot closer to the staff that provide this support and this service. So in that monolithic model, when I have to support 122 elementary schools, it's quite difficult that I'm going to get around. But when it's this regional model, that they have this set specific number, and they're going to see a lot more frequency in terms of communication with the district office. going back to another part of your question, that one of the benefits that I hope that schools will see is that we've taken serious their responses and questions about how they get support from the district office. And so we take that criticism and we're going to use that to build out models that will now give them evidence of what we've done, to not only listen to what they've said, but also provide the support that's going to make that difference in the schools. And so everything here is really about having greater frequency. And that's where I also talk about building the skill set, because I've made it very clear that we can have these models, but everything is about how you, as a person who serves in the model, the people that are on your team, build their skill set so they can provide that greater support for schools. So we don't want to just come to the central office and not grow. You know. But anyway,
I'll jump in around student support services, because we are a little bit delayed behind what is already happening in academics. But the reality is that, to your point, I think Dr. Wilson Norman has said multiple times, this is how we take something that is large and make it small, right? The ultimate goal is not only do our schools, hopefully, will build networks and people that they can count on and connect with and build relationships with, so can our central services staff as they're working in these teams. And the more of that interaction, the better we're going to be. We know that when educators collaborate and align with one another, they help themselves and they help each other, right? And that's the relationship kind of thing that we want to add to help make this more successful.
Thank you, because I've created my own model, so I should tell you now. You can just dismantle it. Which I only have one group of people who've done it, and that is I've requested that they work in their pattern of feeder schools. And I will say my ramps for the last 4 years have evidence that they feel like that's been beneficial. Because when I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, so what are you doing with the 6th grader or 9th grader? They're like, oh, well, we don't know because they've come from everywhere. And I was like, well, you should figure that out. And I will tell you, for me, again, given the schools that I represent, it has been a huge difference, because they're like, oh, that was so helpful to actually be able to know what was happening for these, 4 middle schools who are now in my high school, and that was definitely, and nobody here is surprised, I spent a lot of time with my student support staff. So I'm glad to hear, one, to know that it's a little further behind, but you do know that that's going to be just as important and imperative to them. We've heard multiple times that our kids are in a mental health crisis. And so the last thing that I'll say is, I'm guessing I'm still just supposed to call you when I have a community engagement response question until you figure out who my contact should be for all the people who still call me and say, who should I talk to for student support services?
Call me.
Perfect. Will do. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Well, I think this conversation reminds me, and Chief Ellis, I'm not calling you out, but
She's like, I was trying to give you, I'm like, just a second.
yeah, that's who it be, man. So we got.
yes, no, this just remind me of the committee meeting that we had when Ms. Waters was the chair and talked about how your department worked closely with academics and how the work really, when it was a one-on-one, and that really helped me see this a little bit better, because oftentimes there's this notion that folks in central office don't help our students, which is complete false. It's a lot of things, but it's so far from the truth. And this really shows how our principals, our regions, and our leaders over here are making sure that, number one, this aligns with our strategic plan and how we're able to address those deficits and how we're able to, and I'm looking at Dr. Robinson, to meet those goals in our strategic plan, because that is our work. And I'm glad to see that this collaboration has happened so we can begin to move to this. And I meet often with Mr. Fletcher, and he reminds me that in order to get this work done, you need more hands, more helping hands to get the job done. And so I'm grateful to see, we're moving towards that, but also know we're going to need more hands to go into some of these schools that really needs a little bit more TLC. And so I'm looking to you all to see what are those needs and how can we advocate to make that happen as we move into the budget cycle. We know that in order to do this work, some folks say it doesn't take money, but in order to get the folks that we need, you have to use more funds to get those helping hands. And so I thank you all for this presentation. This has been very, very detailed. It allows us to go back to our districts and talk about what we're doing to, number one, address proficiency scores, what we're doing to close that gap, how we're including, we hear a lot about mental health, how are we including student support services to address our student needs. And so this is our opportunity to really take this presentation through the district, because the work is happening, and oftentimes this work does not get elevated because of the other noises that we're hearing. And so thank you all for taking the time to share this and to really showing this, not just us, but Wake County as a whole, what we're doing to move this district to be the #1 district, not just in North Carolina, but across the states and the countries.
Mr. Chair, if I could,
Yes.
I appreciate what you just said. This model is about addressing proficiency. So we recognize that structuring in a different manner this way will allow us to be able to do that. What I also know is that it will allow the department to be more efficient. And saying that is, we take resources that we have and restructure those in a way where we can be more efficient. Ultimately, I know it also addresses redundancy in what we have in various programs, and that's one of the things we've looked at very closely. But I think the most important thing that you've said is that it is the level of support that we need, and that the structure that we have now and the personnel that we have is really about supporting 150 schools, 160 schools. And so it would probably take Chief Ellis or Dr. Robinson to talk about personnel that was in place 6, 7, or 8 or 9 years ago. I can't say it's changed that much.
It hasn't.
And that is the real issue that we have, that we're going to restructure, be more efficient, reduce redundancy. We still have 50 more schools than we had not so long ago, and that's the real challenge. So that's what we've got to share with the public. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Dr. Wilson-Norman and your team, for always getting us into the weeds to see the data and seeing what our roles are.
Because clearly we like the weeds.
Yes, and giving us our marching orders. So our next meeting is November 6th, same place, same time, and we'll give some folks some time back, and we'll adjourn this meeting at 4:32.
Thank you.